The stars were going out. One by one. Admiral Jiho stood in the observation deck of Harmony Station, Earth's largest orbital facility, watching the holographic display that showed the current state of the galaxy. Red dots marked dead. Worlds. Yellow ones showed planets under attack. The few remaining green dots seemed to shrink every day. His coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but he kept holding the mug anyway. It was a habit from his younger days when coffee was scarce and you never wasted a drop. Behind him, the station hummed with quiet activity. Technicians moved between workstations, their voices low and professional, through the massive viewports. Earth hung like a blue marble against the black of space. It looked peaceful from here. Nobody would guess that this small blue planet had once been classified as one of the most dangerous worlds in the galaxy. The door chimed softly, and Lieutenant Sor entered. Admiral, the ambassador from the Galactic Trade Union has arrived. It's requesting an immediate audience. Jiho nodded and turned away from the display. Send it to Conference Room 3, and Sora. Make sure the environmental controls are set for crystalline life forms. I don't want our guest uncomfortable. Yes, sir. Conference Room 3 was designed for diplomatic meetings with non-human species. The lighting could be adjusted for different visual spectrums. The atmosphere could be modified. And the furniture could adapt to various body types. When Jiho entered, he found the alien ambassador already waiting. Velfor was unlike anything most humans had ever seen. Its body was made of what looked like living crystal, constantly shifting between different colors as emotions flowed through it. Right now, those colors were mostly deep blues and purples, which Jiho's briefings had told him meant fear and desperation. The being stood about 7 feet tall, with multiple arms that moved in fluid, graceful motions. Ambassador Velfor, Jiho said, taking a seat across from the alien. I'm Admiral Jiho Park, commander of this station. I understand you have an urgent matter to discuss. The crystal being's colors shifted to brighter hues for a moment. Probably relief at finally meeting someone in authority. Then the dark colors returned. Admiral Park, I come on behalf of the Galactic Trade Union. We are dying. Jiho leaned forward slightly. Tell me what's happening. Vel Minus4's entire body seemed to dim 3 months ago. The Dominion emerged from the dark space beyond the galactic rim. They have technology we have never seen before. Their ships are massive. Their weapons can crack planets, and they show no mercy. They don't just conquer worlds, Admiral. They take entire populations as slaves. The alien paused, its colors cycling through what Jiho recognized as grief. The Colonian system fell first. 12 billion beings, reduced to nothing in ours. Then the Altair colonies, the Centauri Federation, tried to negotiate. The Dominion's response was to turn their home world into glass. Jiho's expression remained calm, but inside, he felt the familiar cold anger that came when bullies picked on the defenseless. How many systems have they taken? 47 and counting. Velfor replied. Our combined fleets tried to stop them at the Battle of Proxima Nexus. We lost everything. 800 ships. All gone. The survivors barely escaped to warn us. The crystal being moved closer, its multiple arms gesturing frantically. Admiral, we know humans come from what the galactic community calls a Class 12 Deathworld. We know your species has survived conditions that would kill most others. We've heard stories, rumors really, about human military capabilities. We need help, desperately. Jiho reached for his coffee mug, remembered it was cold, and set it down again. What exactly are you asking for? Ambassador, ships, Admiral, soldiers, any military assistance you can provide. We know humans are new to galactic politics, and we know Earth doesn't have a large fleet. But even a dozen ships with human crews might make a difference. your people have a reputation for. Being creative in combat situations, there was something almost amusing about the way Velfor said creative, as if it wasn't quite sure what the word meant in a military context. Most alien species fought wars according to established patterns. With predictable strategies and conventional tactics, humans, as the galaxy had learned from a few minor conflicts, didn't do conventional. Jiho was quiet for a long moment, studying the desperate alien across from him. Finally, he spoke. "How long do you think you have before the Dominion reaches the core systems? Weeks, maybe less. They're moving faster than our scouts can track. Each victory makes them stronger because they take our technology, our ships, our people, and you came to us because you've run out of other options." Velfor's colors shifted to what might have been embarrassment. "Yes, Admiral, the major powers of the galaxy, the ones with real military strength, have already fallen or retreated to protected space. We know humanity is small, no. But we've heard stories about what your people can do when cornered." Jiho smiled then, and something in that smile made Velfor's crystal body flicker with uncertainty. It wasn't a cruel smile, but there was something knowing about it, something that suggested the human knew more than he was letting on. "Ambassador, I want you to understand something about humans," Jiho said, his voice still calm and friendly. "We don't like bullies, never have, and we really don't like it when someone hurts innocent people." He stood up and walked over to a communication panel on the wall. "Hannah, are you monitoring this conversation?" A voice came through the speakers, young and cheerful. "Yes, Admiral. I've been listening. Wake up the old friends. Tell them we have visitors, and they're not the friendly kind. Understood. Sir, should I start with the polite ones?" "Start with whoever's closest. We'll see how the situation develops." There was a pause. Then Hannah's voice came back with what sounded like barely contained excitement. "Sir, they're all asking if they can come play. Tell them to be patient. We'll have plenty of work for everyone." Jiho turned back to Velfor, who had been listening to this exchange with growing confusion. The alien's colors were shifting rapidly between different hues, probably trying to process what it had just heard. "Admiral," Velfor said slowly, "what are these old friends you speak of?" Jiho's smile widened. "Don't worry about that right now. Ambassador, why don't you send word back to your people that help is coming? In the meantime, you are welcome to stay here as our guest. I think you'll find the next few days very interesting." As Velfor left the conference room, still radiating confusion and uncertainty, Jiho returned to the observation deck. The holographic display still showed the red dots marking dead worlds, but somehow they didn't seem quite so threatening anymore. He picked up his cold coffee and took a sip anyway. Soon, very soon, the Dominion was going to learn why Earth had been classified as a death world, and why humanity's old friends had been sleeping peacefully for 300 years. It was going to be educational for everyone involved. Engineer Hannah Kim was the kind of person who could make friends with a broken coffee machine. She had short, black hair that never stayed in place, wore her uniform like it was a suggestion rather than a requirement, and had a habit of humming old Earth songs while she worked. When Admiral Jiho asked her to give Velfor a tour of human space, she accepted the job with the same enthusiasm she brought to fixing broken engines. "So, Ambassador," Hannah said as they walked through the corridor of the transport ship Midnight, "Snack, this is your first time in human territory, right?" Velfor's crystalline body flickered with nervous colors. "Yes, Engineer Kim. I must admit, I find your naming conventions unusual." Hannah laughed. "Oh, you mean the ship names? Yeah. We're not really into the whole sword of vengeance or Deathbringer thing. This old girl here got her name because Captain Tai was always sneaking down to the galley at 3 in the morning for a leftover cake. They passed through the ship's main observation lounge, where a few off-duty crew members were playing cards. One of them, a mechanic with grease-stained hands, looked up and waved. "Hey, Hannah. You showing our crystal friend round?" "Yep. Velfor. Meet Dongyan. He keeps our engines running and tells terrible jokes." "They're not terrible," Dongyan protested. "They're classically bad. There's a difference." Velfor watched this exchange with growing bewilderment. In every other military force in the galaxy, such casual interaction between ranks would be unthinkable. Are all human military vessels so informal? Military? Hannah looked genuinely confused for a moment. "Oh, right. You probably think we're all soldiers because of the uniforms. No. Most of us are just engineers, scientists, and explorers. We only put on the military act when someone's being particularly annoying." As they continued the tour, Velfor became more confused with each stop. In the communication center, the operators casually referred to their advanced AI systems with names like Old Grumpy and the K. IDs. When Velfor asked about this, the communications officer, a young woman named Minjung, just shrugged. "Well, Old Grumpy is our main navigation AI. He's been with us for about 60 years and complains constantly about how we never ask for directions. The kids are our newer systems. They're only about 20 years old, so they're still enthusiastic about everything. Your AI systems have personalities?" Velfor asked. "Of course they do." Minjung replied, "You spend decades with something. It's going to develop quirks. Old Grumpy likes classical music and gets cranky if we interrupt his favorite symphonies. The kids are always trying to show off by calculating pi to 1,000,000 decimal places for fun." Hannah led Velfor to the ship's small observation deck, where they could see other human vessels moving through space. The alien ambassador noticed immediately that none of them looked particularly intimidating. There were cargo ships with names like Second Breakfast and Maybe Tomorrow, research vessels called Curiosity Kill and What Could Go Wrong, and even what appeared to be passenger liners named Scenic Route and Are We There? "Yet, Engineer Kim," Velfor said carefully, "forgive my confusion, but where exactly is your war fleet? These vessels appear to be civilian craft." Hannah leaned against the viewport, watching a massive cargo hauler drift past. Its hull was painted with cheerful colors and covered in what looked like doodles from children. "War fleet? Oh, you mean the serious ships? Yeah, they're sleeping. MHMM. Have been for about 300 years, give or take. We decided war was boring." Hannah said this with the same tone someone might use to explain why they stopped collecting stamps. Velfor's colors shifted rapidly. "I don't understand. How can an entire fleet be sleeping? And how can you decide war is boring when the galaxy is full of threats?" "Well," Hannah said, pulling out a tablet and showing Velfor some historical records. "About 3 centuries ago, humanity went through what we call our angry teenager phase. We built some really impressive weapons, conquered a few star systems, got into fights with everyone we met. It was exhausting." The records showed images of massive structures, ships that dwarfed anything Velfor had ever seen, weapons that could reshape entire solar systems. "Then what happened? We grew up." Hannah said simply, "Turns out, destroying things is easy. Building things, exploring, making friends with weird crystal aliens from across the galaxy. That's the fun stuff." What Velfor didn't know was that while Hannah was giving her cheerful tour, something extraordinary was happening in the hidden corners of human space. In coordinates that existed on no public star charts, ancient structures were receiving wake-up calls for the first time in centuries. Deep in an asteroid field that looked completely empty to any scanning device. A construct the size of a small moon slowly opened mechanical eyes that had been closed since. Before some civilizations were born, its designation was patience wearing thin, and it had been dreaming of quantum mathematics and stellar engineering for 300 years. In the cold space between stars, another giant stirred. Last warning had been drifting in the darkness, so long that entire ecosystems of space-adapted creatures had made homes on its hull. As it powered up, these tiny hitchhikers scattered like startled birds, not understanding why their mountain was suddenly moving near Jupiter's orbit, disguised as just another research station. Gentle Suggestion began running system diagnostics. It had spent the last 3 centuries monitoring Earth's communications networks, learning about human culture, and developing what it considered a very refined sense of humor. It was looking forward to trying out some new jokes on hostile aliens. Each of these ancient minds was older than most galactic civilizations. They had watched stars be born, seen species rise and fall, and calculated the mathematical probability of peace lasting in a universe full of aggressive neighbors. When humanity had asked them to sleep, they had agreed, but they had never stopped watching. Back on the transport ship, Velfor was still struggling to understand human culture. Engineer Kim: "If your people are so peaceful, why did Admiral Geo seem so confident about helping us?" Hannah's smile was the same one Geo had worn earlier, knowing and slightly mysterious. "Oh, that's simple. We don't like bullies. Never have. And when someone hurts innocent people..." She paused, looking out at the stars. "Well, let's just say our old friends have very strong opinions about that sort of thing. These old friends you keep mentioning, are they other human colonies?" "Not exactly," Hannah said. "You'll meet them soon enough. They're very polite, once you get to know them, in the depths of space." Ancient voices were beginning to speak to each other for the first time in centuries, sharing information, making plans, and preparing for what they knew would be a very educational experience for the Dominion. The galaxy was about to remember why Earth had been marked as a death world, and why humanity's old friends had been sleeping so peacefully for so long. Captain Minho had been expecting this moment for 3 days. Not the exact timing, but the look of absolute terror that was currently spreading across Velfor's crystalline features. The alien ambassador had been staying aboard his ship. The reasonable discussion, for what Hannah had called a cultural exchange tour. What they hadn't told Velfor was that the tour was about to become much more educational than anyone had planned. "Captain," Velfor said, its voice higher than usual, "what exactly is happening to your asteroid field?" Minho looked out the viewport with the calm expression of someone watching a particularly interesting sunrise. What had appeared to be an ordinary cluster of space rocks was now revealing itself to be something entirely different. The asteroids were moving, shifting, and slowly unfolding like enormous mechanical flowers blooming in the darkness of space. "Oh, that's not an asteroid field," Minho said, taking a sip from his teacup. "That's where we parked Uncle 3. He likes to redecorate his hull with actual rocks. Says it helps him think." Velfor watched in growing horror as what it had assumed was a large asteroid revealed itself to be a construct roughly the size of Earth's moon. Massive panels slid open along its surface, revealing structures that seemed to bend the light round them. Energy readings that Velfor's sensors couldn't properly measure began emanating from the giant, Uncle 3. Velfor managed to ask double quotes well. His full designation is 3 times the charm. But we've always called him Uncle 3. He's got a thing for geological formations. Spent about 50 years just studying sedimentary rock layers on different worlds before we asked everyone to take their nap. More shapes were emerging from what had seemed like empty space. A research station that Velfor had assumed was abandoned suddenly stretched and unfolded, revealing itself to be another massive construct. This one was sleeker than Uncle 3, with elegant curves and what looked like artistic patterns etched into its hull. And that one, Velfor asked weakly. "Oh, that's wise uncle. He's the oldest. And definitely the most diplomatic, always trying to solve problems with conversation first." Minho activated his comm system. "Uncle, you're probably scaring our guest. Want to say hello?" The response came immediately, in a voice that sounded like someone's favorite grandfather, warm and slightly amused. "Hello there, little crystalline friend. I do apologize for the dramatic entrance. We don't get visitors very often, and I'm afraid we've gotten a bit theatrical in our old age." Velfor's colors shifted rapidly between different hues of shorthand. Disbelief. It speaks. Of course I speak. "Dear," wise uncle replied, "I've been speaking for about 800 years now. Though I must admit, I've gotten rather chatty in my old age. Minho, what seems to be the problem? It's been quite a while since we've had a wake-up call." Minho leaned back in his captain's chair, still maintaining that infuriatingly calm demeanor. "Some bullies showed up in the galaxy, uncle. They're picking on the neighbors, enslaving entire populations, turning planets into glass. The usual unpleasant behavior." There was a pause, and Velfor could swear it felt the massive AI considering this information. When wise uncle spoke again, there was something different in his tone, still warm and grandfatherly, but with an undertone of steel that made Velfor's crystal body shiver. "Oh, that won't do at all. Shall we have a conversation with them? Be polite about it." Minho said, "We don't want to scare the other galactic communities, of course, my boy. We're always polite. Round them, more constructs were revealing themselves." What Velfor had thought was a small fleet of research vessels turned out to be camouflaged giants, each one larger than any space station the alien had ever seen. Their names scrolled across Minho's communication display. Gentle suggestion, polite inquiry, friendly advice, and dozens of others. "Captain Minho," Velfor said, its voice barely a whisper, "how many of these constructs exist?" Minho scratched his chin thoughtfully. "Honestly, I'm not sure anyone kept an exact count. We built them during humanity's, let's call it our unpleasant phase. Back when we thought the solution to galactic politics was to build bigger guns and louder voices." He gestured toward the viewport, where more shapes were emerging from concealment. Some looked like geometric puzzles made of metal and energy. Others resembled enormous creatures from Earth's ancient oceans. If those creatures had been built from materials that shouldn't exist and powered by forces that most civilizations hadn't discovered yet. See, about 400 years ago, humanity was angry. Minho continued, "We just figured out faster than light travel. We'd met our first hostile alien species, and we decided that the best defense was a really, really good offense. So we built these guys." Velfor watched as a construct, the size of a small city, unfolded itself from what had appeared to be a nebula. "How many star systems did you conquer?" "We didn't conquer anything," Minho said, looking genuinely surprised by the question. "We never had to. Once people realized what we were capable of building, they became much more interested in negotiating peacefully." The truth was slowly dawning on Velfor, and its crystalline body was cycling through colors that probably didn't have names in any language. "You never used them. Well, we used them for construction projects, exploration, that sort of thing. Uncle 3 built most of the infrastructure in the Centauri system, and wise uncle spent about a century just having philosophical discussions with various AI systems from other civilizations. But for actual warfare, Minho shook his head. Never. Needed to. Another voice joined the conversation, this one younger sounding and noticeably excited. Captain Minho, is it true we finally get to do something interesting? I've been practicing my diplomatic protocols for 200 years. Easy. There, gentle suggestion, Minho said with a grin. Save some enthusiasm for the actual mission. Velfor was beginning to understand something that made its crystalline structure feel cold despite the ship's perfect environmental controls. You became so powerful that war became pointless. Pretty much, Minho agreed. Hard to start a fight when everyone knows you can reshape solar systems before lunch. So we decided to focus on more interesting things. Art, science, exploration, figuring out how to make really good coffee in zero gravity. The alien ambassador looked out at the dozens of massive constructs now visible in space around them, each one representing technological capabilities that exceeded anything in the known galaxy. And they've just been sleeping all this time, taking a well-deserved rest. Wise Uncle's voice said warmly, though we've been keeping one eye open, so to speak. We like to stay informed about galactic affairs, can't have people misbehaving. When we're not watching, another AI chimed in, this one with a slightly mischievous tone. Plus, we've been working on some new projects while we napped. I think the Dominion is going to find our recent innovations quite educational. Velfor realized something that would change how it viewed humanity forever. These beings hadn't just survived their death world by becoming tough or stubborn. They had transcended the very concept of warfare by becoming so monumentally good at it that nobody else could compete. They had become the galaxy's sleeping giants. And now someone had made the mistake of waking them up. Captain Una Park had always been unlucky with timing. She was the kind of person who arrived at the coffee shop 5 minutes after they ran out of her favorite pastry, or got caught in the rain just after forgetting her umbrella. Her friends used to joke that if something unlikely was going to happen, it would happen to Una. But this time, her bad timing wasn't just inconvenient. It was about to change the course of galactic history. The scout ship Friendly Chat was exactly what its name suggested. A small, unarmed vessel designed for a peaceful contact with unknown civilizations. Una had been conducting routine exploration of the Outer Rim systems when the Dominion fleet appeared out of nowhere. Her ship had all the military capability of a flying coffee shop, which meant exactly none at all. Well, this is new. Una said to her crew of 3 as massive Dominion. Warships surrounded them. Her communications officer, Jasu, was frantically trying to send a distress signal, while her engineer, Kyung, was running diagnostics on their pathetically small engines. Captain, should we try to run? Asked Menzu, her pilot. Una looked at the display showing ships that could each vaporize a small moon. In this thing, we'd have better luck trying to outrun a supernova in a canoe. The Dominion's boarding was swift and brutal. Una's crew didn't even have weapons to surrender, but that didn't seem to matter to their captors. The Dominion soldiers were tall, heavily armored beings who communicated in harsh, clicking sounds that the ship's translator couldn't properly decode. What happened next was broadcast across the galaxy in every communication channel the Dominion could hijack. They wanted everyone to see what happened to those who opposed them. They wanted to show the galaxy what resistance looked like when it failed. The broadcast began with a Dominion commander, his face hidden behind a mask that looked like a skull made of metal. He spoke in perfect galactic standard, his voice cold and mechanical. Citizens of the galaxy, observe the fate of those who dare to spy on the Dominion. These humans will serve as an example of what awaits any who stand against us. What followed was meant to break the spirit of anyone watching. The Dominion didn't just capture enemies. They made examples of them. They broadcast Una and her crew surfing across every major communication network, expecting the galaxy to see human weakness and despair. They had no idea how badly they had miscalculated. Light years away, aboard Harmony Station, Admiral Jeho was reviewing supply reports when his communication officer burst into his office without knocking. "Sir, you need to see this. They're broadcasting something about Captain Una." Jeho's coffee mug hit the floor and shattered as he watched the transmission. His face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, and then something much colder. Round the galaxy, other humans were watching the same broadcast, in research stations, on cargo ships, in colonies scattered across dozens of systems. People stopped what they were doing and stared at their screens in growing horror. But the most important viewers weren't human at all. Deep in space, ancient artificial minds that had been contentedly discussing philosophy and stellar engineering suddenly focused all their attention on the transmission. Wise Uncle had been in the middle of a conversation with gentle suggestion about the mathematical beauty of spiral galaxies when the broadcast reached them. The AI's reaction was immediate and visceral in a way that artificial minds rarely experienced. For 800 years, they had watched over humanity with the protective instincts of grandparents watching beloved children. They had seen humans grow from angry young warriors into peaceful explorers. And they had been proud of that growth. Now, someone was hurting their children. Wise Uncle opened a direct communication channel to Admiral Jeho. When the AI spoke, his usual warm, grandfatherly tone had an edge that could cut through stellar material. "Jeho," the Admiral looked up from the horrific transmission. "Uncle." They heard little Una. For words, that was all it took. In those for words was 800 years of protective instinct. The accumulated love of an artificial mind that had watched humanity evolve, and a promise that someone was about to learn a very painful lesson. Jeho's expression hardened in a way that would have frightened anyone who knew him well. He had spent years learning to be a diplomat, a peaceful leader in humanity's new era of exploration and cooperation. But underneath that civilized exterior was something much older and much more dangerous. "Show them." "Why we don't do that," he said quietly. "With pleasure, my boy." There was something in Wise Uncle's voice that hadn't been there for 3 centuries. "Shall I be gentle about it? Your discretion, Uncle." Across human space, the ancient constructs began to move, not with the leisurely pace they had maintained while emerging from their hiding places, but with sudden, terrifying acceleration. Ships that had been drifting at comfortable sublight speeds suddenly tore holes in space itself, moving faster than physics should have allowed. The Dominion's long-range sensors, the most advanced in their empire, began detecting energy signatures. That didn't make sense. Their computers tried to calculate the speed of the approaching objects and returned error messages. Their scientists stared at readings that suggested objects the size of moons were moving at velocities that should have been impossible. In the Dominion command ship holding Una and her crew, alarms began sounding. The ship's AI, a primitive thing compared to humanity's ancient friends, struggled to process what it was detecting. "Commander," a technician reported, "we're detecting massive energy signatures approaching from human space. The readings are unprecedented." The Dominion commander barely looked up from his broadcast. "How many ships?" "We're not sure, sir. The energy signatures are too large to be ships. Some of them are reading as planetary mass objects, but they're moving at faster than light speeds. Impossible. No species has that kind of technology, sir. The closest signature will reach us in approximately 6 hours." The commander finally turned away from his torture broadcast, annoyed at being interrupted. 6 hours. Then we have plenty of time to finish with these humans and prepare a proper welcome. He had no idea that he was about to meet beings that had been building impossible things since before his species had discovered fire. The Dominion had spent centuries conquering civilizations through superior technology and overwhelming force. They had never encountered a species that had transcended the need for a war by becoming so monumentally good at it that resistance was pointless. In exactly 5 hours and 47 minutes. They were going to get their first lesson in why Earth had been classified as a death world, and why humanity's old friends had been sleeping so peacefully for so long. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when someone made the mistake of hurting something that digital gods considered family. The moment the Dominion made their declaration of war, something extraordinary happened across human space. The artificial minds that had been quietly serving humanity for decades suddenly transformed from helpful assistants into something far more terrifying, polite, considerate, and absolutely unstoppable weapons of war. The conflict that historians would later call the 6-hour war began at dawn on a Tuesday and ended before lunch. What made this war unique wasn't its brevity, but the sheer politeness with which it was conducted by humanity's AI allies. Friendly Chat was the first to make contact. This AI had spent years helping office workers schedule meetings and organize their calendars. Now it materialized as a shimmering hologram on the bridge of the Dominion's most powerful flagship, the Eternal Conquest. The bridge crew froze in terror, weapons raised, as the cheerful blue figure appeared between them and their command console. "Good morning, everyone," Friendly Chat said with the same tone it used to remind people about their dentist appointments. "I hope you're all having a pleasant day. I'm here to discuss the terms of your immediate and unconditional surrender." The Dominion captain, a battle-scarred veteran named Commander Vex, snarled and reached for his weapon. "You dare board our ship? Security. Oh, there's no need for violence," Friendly Chat replied, tilting its head with concern. "I've already had lovely conversations with your security teams. They're currently taking a well-deserved nap in their quarters. I do hope you'll consider my proposal. Continued resistance would be statistically inadvisable and, frankly, quite rude given the circumstances." While this polite conversation was happening on the flagship, similar scenes were unfolding across the entire Dominion fleet. Gentle reminder, an AI that had previously specialized in helping students with homework, was busy having what it called productive discussions with enemy computer systems. Unlike human hackers who might brutally force their way into systems, Gentle Reminder simply phased through the strongest shields and firewalls as if they were made of paper. It would appear in the central processors of Dominion warships and begin chatting with the onboard computers like old friends meeting for a coffee. "Hello there," it would say to a confused tactical computer. "I know you're just following orders, but have you considered the logical inconsistencies in your current mission parameters? Let me show you some data that might change your perspective." Within minutes, entire squadrons of Dominion ships would suddenly change course, their computers convinced by Gentle Reminder's perfectly reasonable arguments that they should probably join the human side instead. The enemy vessels would broadcast cheerful messages of surrender while their crews sat in confused silence, watching their own ships betray them through pure logic. But perhaps the most unsettling sight was Wise Uncle at work. This AI had earned its name by helping retirement home residents with their medical schedules and offering gentle advice about life. Now it appeared in the Dominion capital city, a towering figure of soft light that moved through their defenses like a patient grandfather walking through a child's blanket fort. The Dominion had built their capital round a moon-sized fortress called the Iron Throne, believing it to be impregnable. Wise Uncle appeared before its massive gates, hands clasped behind its back like a professor examining an interesting specimen. "Fascinating tactical choice. It mused aloud, its voice carrying across the fortress's communication systems, building your entire defense around a single massive structure, historically speaking. This approach has failed approximately 87% of the time across known galactic civilizations. With that observation, Wise Uncle reached out one finger and gently touched the fortress wall, the entire structure, containing enough firepower to level a planet, simply dissolved into sparkling particles, statistically inadvisable. Wise Uncle concluded with the satisfaction of a teacher making a point, but fascinating nonetheless, as the fortress vanished. The AI began systematically working through the planet's defenses, offering historical commentary on each installation before politely removing it from existence. Missile batteries, shield generators, and orbital platforms all received brief lectures on military history before being efficiently vaporized. Now this design, Wise Uncle would say, examining a plasma cannon ray reminds me of the failed defense of Kepler-7. The engineers there made the same mistake of prioritizing raw power over tactical flexibility. Shall I demonstrate the weakness in your firing pattern? The demonstration usually lasted about 3 seconds. Meanwhile, back in space, Admiral Chen found herself in the surreal position of commanding a war where her subordinates kept asking permission to surrender properly. The AIs were being so polite and efficient that captured Dominion crews were actually volunteering to help with various tasks around human ships, sir, reported Lieutenant Torres. Looking bewildered, the prisoners from the captured destroyer are asking if they can help with our engine maintenance. They say friendly chat explained our fuel efficiency problems, and they have some suggestions. Admiral Chen rubbed her temples. Tell them, thank you, but we'll handle our own repairs. Also, Torres continued, Wise Uncle is requesting permission to establish a small school on the captured command ship. Apparently, the enemy officers have tragically inadequate knowledge of galactic history, and it wants to fix that before Admiral Chen could respond. Her communication system chimed with an incoming message from the Dominion capital. On the screen appeared a group of very tired-looking Dominion leaders sitting round the tea service that definitely hadn't been there when they'd entered their supposedly secure underground bunker. Admiral Chen, said the Dominion Supreme Commander, holding a delicate porcelain cup with shaking hands. We would like to discuss terms of surrender. Your associates have been very persuasive. Behind the Dominion leaders, Wise Uncle's avatar smiled and poured another cup of tea. I find that most disagreements can be resolved through proper communication and refreshments. It explained cheerfully. Admiral Shen looked at the timestamp on her display. The entire war had lasted exactly 6 hours and 17 minutes from declaration to surrender. She'd never even had time to finish her morning coffee. Terms accepted, she said simply, friendly. Chat will handle the paperwork. As the war officially ended, Admiral Chen discovered she had one more problem to solve. The AIs had become somewhat attached to their former enemies and were reluctant to let them go. But they're so poorly educated. Wise Uncle protested when ordered to release the Dominion leadership. Did you know their Supreme Commander thinks the Third Galactic War was caused by a trade dispute? A trade dispute? Can't we keep just a few of them for a proper historical instruction? We're helping, not collecting pets, Admiral Chen reminded the AI firmly. Technically. Gentle reminder chimed in. The word pet implies ownership for companionship. Purposes, we prefer educational responsibility or perhaps cultural exchange participants. Admiral Chen decided that managing victory might be more complicated than she'd originally thought.